Hello, Stanfords, and thank you very much for inviting me today to rattle on a bit about my new train book about rattling around Spain on trains. And as you can see, from the title is Slow Trains Around Spain, a 3,000-mile adventure on 52 rides. Well, the clue to what it's about is obviously in the title, and it was indeed a month-long journey in 2019, in July and August, in a big S shape, taking the route around Spain, taking the branch lines, smaller regional services around Spain, and starting in the northeast of the country in Figueres and travelling then through Catalonia and Aragon up to the north coast to San Sebastian, and then along the north coast into Galicia, and then down into Madrid via Zamora, and onto Extremadura, across the country to Valencia, down to the south coast, and eventually back across westwards to Seville, where I finished. That was the route. And the joy of this type of train journey was that I was traveling away from the big cities that we know about mainly, and the Costas and the Balearics and the Canaries, the parts of Spain that perhaps the holiday brochures and the guidebooks tend to focus on, and stopping off almost on a whim without knowing where I was going each day. I didn't have an itinerary. I just had this vague S route that I was planning, and the idea was to take the temperature or get to know Spain from the rail tracks, and to visit the sleepy, dusty, out of the way places where the big action of the day is a dog itching its leg by your seat in the cafe in the square, and to experience life one step removed from the fast lane of tourism, and meet people and talk to people, to station masters, to conductors, to fellow passengers, to people in the towns I visited. And one thing I wanted to show in a way was that adventures are possible, and railways are a great way of having these adventures. And my previous book was entitled Slow Trains to Venice, and that went around different parts of Europe as far as Odessa and Ukraine, and then back to Venice. But it missed out Spain altogether. So I was curious about the Iberian Peninsula and wanted to visit, which I did obviously on this book. The conclusion, I suppose, from the whole journey, apart from the joy of trains, of Spanish trains, and I weaved that into the description of the actual places I visited. So you get a sense of the crossing the viaducts, seeing the ravines, weaving between mountains, winding down through valleys and across the plains. But the other, and to touch on also the history of Spain of its railways, which began in 1848, 18 years after the first train in Britain between Manchester and Liverpool, the first passenger plane in 1830. The trains were slow in Spain, and slow to start, and part of the fear was that people might be able to invade the country by spinning across the tracks through the mountains and down to Madrid. And it wasn't that long ago that before then that the French had invaded. So there's a history to the tracks, and there's also the beauty of the journey. There's the interest in the places you visit along the way. And from a personal point of view, I fell in love with the country much more deeply than I imagined I would, and came to enjoy the cultural sense and the sense of community that in each of the places I was very much welcomed. And by going off the beaten track while staying on the small tracks of the trains, you see a Spain beyond the costas. And I recommend a journey of this type to anybody. There are maps in the book if you care to follow my footsteps or track steps, but the best thing is to make up your own journey, I think, with these things. Anyway, thank you, Stanfords, very much for inviting me to talk about my book today.